Welcome, everybody, to the Culture of Life podcast. My name's Andrew Jacoby. This is First Fisherman Media here coming from Austria, Vienna, Austria, at Cafe Diglas. And I have a wonderful guest with me, Alexander Tschugguel. Is that the right way to pronounce your name, Alexander?
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I've been very inspired by learning about you and your institute, and so I'd love to sort of talk a little bit about what you're up to with the institute. Obviously, the purpose of the Culture of Life project is we're trying to think about how it is that we can create a culture of life, because we live, as you know, in a culture of death where abortion is through the roof. There's all kinds of attempted redefinitions of marriage. Religion is falling away, and we seem to be going in the wrong direction in my country, and I'd like to hear your perspective, but it also seems like the same in your country. So we want to talk about how we can reverse that and what we can do to go towards a culture of life. So could you just give a little bit of background, maybe a 1 minute or so introduction to who you are and what the Institute's about?
Yes. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Alexander Tschugguel. I was born and raised in Vienna, Austria. I'm 29 years old, married, and have a child, little boy.
How old?
And just 6.5 weeks old, so
praise God.
Quite new. Thank you very much. So, yes, my background, I was received in the church when I was 15, and afterwards started to engage very much in the pro-life and pro-family fight, especially in Germany and Austria. I'm the founder of one of the biggest, if not the biggest, pro-family organization in Germany, the Demo für alle. And one of the founders.
What is that in English? How would
you cannot really translate it. It means more or less demonstration for all, but it was named in this way because at the time we've created it, there was a huge Manif pour tous movement in France fighting for marriage, and we did the same thing in Germany.
For traditional marriage.
Of course.
For real marriage.
For marriage, if I use the terms I use today, please consider that I always use them in a traditional form and not in the modern form. But we can go talk about this later. And then in Austria, I'm one of the founders of the March for Life in Austria. And was
when did that begin?
Excuse me?
When did that begin?
The March for Life itself began in the 70s and 80s already, but the organization was changed many times. And the last time it changed was 6 years ago when we founded it newly in order to create it in a not different, but in a very stronger and bigger way, and it worked very well. We managed to raise the numbers from 500 people coming to nearly 5,000 people coming, and Corona measures destroyed this pretty much, and now we are with 2,500 on average. A very big youth march. If you look at our inhabitants in Vienna, if you look at our Austrian people living in Austria, it's 9 million people roughly, so it's a very good number. And then I created the St. Bonifice Institute, an institute which tries which works in many different political areas, and the main goal of it is that whatever happens in the world, in especially our world, obviously, so focused on Austria, focused on Central Europe, but focused also on the rest of the Western world, and focused especially on what's happening in Rome and in the church. We try to do an analysis from a traditional Catholic point of view, and if this analysis brings us to a point where we are ready to publish something, we normally publish not publicly, but we publish those things, dossiers more or less, and send them to different media outlets, different politicians, to different church leaders, to priests, etc., in order to strengthen them in their Catholic position. Yeah. That's what we do. And we organize public rosary rallies. Today is a public rosary rally. Every Wednesday at 6 p.m. in front of Our Lady of the Scots. That's not true. It had a different name, but that's the Viennese name for it, the Shottentor. It was named after this Irish people, and as you know, the Irish people are called Scots in Latin.
Irish, yeah.
So that's the reason. That's the reason it's named like this. Yes, and then we do lots of interviews and videos, sometimes with our own banner, sometimes for other people. It depends on what fits best. So that's how it works.
What other particular issues? I know on your site there's obviously, it seems like marriage and abortion are the two biggest ones. How would you list out what is the priorities of the Institute?
Well, the priority is very clear. The first priority is God comes first. So it's you can more or less go. Just use the 10 commandments and try, and that's our priority. So first is God, then comes the family, etc., and then comes theft, murder, all those things. First murder, obviously family murder, then the whole perversion, then all the other things. communism, theft, etc.
Right, sure.
So so we follow the Ten Commandments more or less. What we do is we focus very much on bringing back a traditional understanding of faith and the church, because many people want this and they don't get it anymore. We do not do it by saying that we are now here in order to be the better church for the people. No, not at all. I think the church is holy and the church is perfect. Obviously, there are some people here on earth who represent the church who are not holy and not perfect, but that's normal. And I think we ourselves are also not perfect and not holy yet, and or maybe at all. Who knows? So what we want to do is we want to focus on the eternal teaching of the church, on the saints the church brought forward, the doctrine of the church in general.
Right.
That's what we do.
So there's I heard an interesting interview with you at the Tradition, Family and Property in Pennsylvania. They're talking about you made a claim there that I thought was very interesting, which was that the impression that Americans have about the Catholic Church in Europe, maybe Austria in specific, is that it's kind of dead and dying and going away. And you were saying that that's not really true.
No.
And this was news to me because I had this impression. I lived here for a long time, but I wasn't Catholic, so it didn't really matter to me one way or the other. So could you speak a little bit about, I think Americans might have the wrong impression about the health of the church in Austria and Europe and in general.
So there are two things I want to say before answering this question. First of all, the American culture is a very different culture to the European culture. It's a newer culture, and if you obviously we can discuss what exactly a culture is, but the Americans do have their own culture. They do have it.
Very Protestant culture.
Well, yes, Protestant and very some things very modernist. But we look at the European culture, we are also completely decadent in other things. So we don't want to fight right now about this. But the American culture is very public, so whatever happens is normally news immediately. If you talk about, for example, we now had this recent case of a priest who was laicized by the Vatican.
Father Pavone,
this would be no news in Europe. Maybe a little bit news. It's only typical America that everyone has an opinion on it before even knowing what exactly happened.
Right.
It's interesting. Before everyone knew what exactly the bishop or the Vatican decided on, it was already news that it's unjust or just
Twitter,
or whatever. You know, on Twitter and everywhere. So you see that it's a very American answer to problematic. Whereas in Europe, if things like this happen, so if we see that our faith is being disrespected in public, that normally the faithful in Europe try to go out of the way of the public media. So in Europe, the answer is exactly the opposite. Traditionally, this changed now a little bit, so we will see more and more Catholics coming into the public again. Especially right now, the recent elections, if you look a little bit at it, Italy, Giorgia Meloni and also Matteo Salvini are both very proud of their Catholic faith. If you look at the Polish government, they are very proud of the Catholic faith. If you look at Orban, is not a Catholic, but he's a Calvinist, but he promotes, his wife is a Catholic, and he promotes the Catholic faith.
Also Judeo-Christian Christian
society. He promotes the Catholic faith also quite a lot.
Most Hungarians are Catholic, right?
Yeah, the majority is Catholic, but it's not a huge majority. It's after all, it was also a former communist country, so lots of people have no faith at all.
Sure.
If you look at Spain, for example, the rise of the Vox Party is more or less explicitly Catholic. If you look at France, if you look at the right-wing party, the Front National, has a very nationalistic background, but right now more and more Catholic politicians come to the post. Marine Le Pen especially. Marion Maréchal especially. She's not in the Front National right now, but she, for example, also embraces the Catholic faith very much. So you see it comes back, but in the past, in the last decades, what you will see is that as soon as there's an attack on the church and the bishops start no longer defending the faith, then the faithful try to find other more private, more familiar rooms.
Right, that was your point in the interview. Yes. It's much more family-oriented.
It's way more family-oriented. That the main difference between the United States and Europe, if you look at it from a sheer everyday life perspective, is that the typical European would not change his location 10 times in his life, but rather stay normally where he was raised. So the typical European, if you go, maybe not in big cities, but if you go, let's say, outside of Vienna to the countryside and ask the people, why do you live there? Most of them will tell you, well, I was born here, my parents were born here, my grandparents were born here, etc. If you go to the United States, people will definitely not tell you this. They will tell you that they already changed into different states even in their life, even though those states
are culture.
Yes, even though they're yes, and why not? It's a different culture, as I said. But some of them are thousands of kilometers away from each other, or miles away from each other. So that's a huge difference. So here, normally, if you have a problem, the first answer you will find is difficult to find because it's a private family answer. And yes, in the Catholic families of Europe, you will definitely still find the faith. Even more than this, you will now find it actually growing more and more.
Right.
It's not the numbers we want to have. We had in Austria, for example, we were 100%, more or less 100% Catholic country. This changed over the time of our history a few times, but we were always 80% plus Catholic.
Would you say that's also true amongst the young people as well? Is this is true? Because I'm 49. Your generation you're at least one generation before me, and so
it depends. So I don't want to make up things. I have to say that in general, the question is what you consider the young generation.
That's
so
true.
if you look at the young generation, you will find extremely high percentage being totally destroyed. So without being raised without actually parents, they have parents, but their parents were not actually even. Definitely, most of them divorced. And I don't want to blame anyone here. You know, we live in terrible anti-cultural, anti-truth times.
Right,
So obviously
sure.
this happens.
Sure.
Many of them went through abortion or survived an abortion more or less. So they don't know about it. But maybe one of the siblings was actually killed in abortion. Their contraceptives are very normal. Taking drugs is very normal, especially taking official drugs like certain pharmacologicals and so on. So what you find out at the end of the day is that if you look at the not destroyed part of society, so or the people who actually did have a childhood with normal with parents who love them and who are together,
Right.
etc. If you look at them, the majority of them right now is really looking for God and for the truth.
Right.
So yes, it's a little bit hard to talk about this because if it depends on how we define society. And this is now my definition only for this podcast maybe, but I use this quite often. Society is a good term, so we have to look at at what is really working. And a working society is not something we can invent, but it grows naturally out of family relationships between families.
Right.
And everywhere you still have this, you have a very, very strong faith still there, and it comes more and more back and back.
And this is less in the cities.
It's less in the cities.
So
well,
it's
even
more
growing in the
in
cities, but yes,
countryside?
obviously it's less in the cities than on the
Sure.
countryside.
Right. So it's in the country. If you go outside of Vienna, you'll find that the
Yes,
faith is stronger.
But yes, in a way. Now, I would not say this. I would say their natural understanding is stronger. But the faith is not necessarily stronger, because the good thing about the cities is obviously that you have broader variety and therefore also more good priests. So if you, for example, look into Vienna
At the
has...
John Paul II Center I was looking at.
Yeah, you went
recently.
there. Okay.
No, I want to go today. I was supposed to go
the John
stop
Paul
by.
it's
From
very
the
charismatic
Christi.
from Legionaries of Christ. So what you have in Vienna, you have dozens of priests, and I'm not kidding, by the way, who are all very, very faithful, who also in the time of the so-called pandemic, where everything was locked up, still went to the faithful, and you could still go to mass there, etc.
Were they doing it in houses? Was it sort of secret?
It was very often secret. It was very often
That's
private
amazing.
houses, private. And I was.
So were you attending these masses?
Yeah, of course. I was organizing lots of them, and I was very. Unfortunately, every one of us sometimes has the problem to have the pride issues, and I was extremely proud of myself. I was like, "Oh, I'm so great," because we organized hidden masses. And then after the first lockdown was over, I talked with my friends, and I was showing off, and I was like, "Yeah, we organized hidden masses." And then every one of them told me, "Yeah, we did the same."
Right. So there's
I
a
found
whole
out
network
it
of
was
hidden
completely
masses.
normal thing in the first lockdown that all the faith families actually organized masses. So in Austria, I have to say that it's really difficult to find anyone I know who did not have the chance to go to a mass, and that's quite amazing. So you see that the hidden network works very well, and the question is now, is it good that it's hidden or not? Well, there are two answers to this. First of all, it is good that there is such a network,
that it exists,
and it is understandable that it's hidden, because why not? Not everyone is ready to fight, not everyone has the possibilities to fight, and some people also from their own character are just more hidden people. Let's say if you're more introverted, for example, why
is
would
this something in the Germanic culture that you would say? Because
especially
it's a little bit less, let's say, demonstrative, a little bit less,
so
a little bit more
the
reserved.
southern Germans, so from the people, the Bavarians, for example, and the Austrians are part of the Bavarian people. They are obviously they are not demonstrating people. I would lie if I said this is always the case, because in the Corona times we had the biggest demonstration in the whole history.
Right, I saw that. Yeah, Vienna was going.
So it is possible. If there's a huge injustice, you will see the people going to the street, but it's not in. Like the French people always demonstrate. The Italians are different, but they also like to do this. But the Austrians normally don't, and the Southern Germans. So it was quite amazing to see this, but there's another thing to this. If you ignore ideologies and just look at the nature of mankind, then you will find out that the men need need leadership in a way. They need a hierarchy, and not a perverted hierarchy, not a wrong hierarchy, not a hierarchy where someone says that he is our voice, but in reality he does exactly the opposite.
Sure.
Or some certain pastors who end up actually killing their own sheep instead of protecting it.
Sure.
Those things happen, but in general, the natural hierarchical understanding is very, very basic for every human. So at the end of the day, humans need examples, and if there are no public examples, it's very difficult to do something right, because at the end of the day, you never know if this is something you can do, if it's even correct. Even if your brain tells you it's correct, if nobody else is doing it publicly, then you will ask yourself many times if it's really correct, because if nobody's doing it, it's very difficult to fight against it.
If you're the only one that doesn't want the shot.
So, yeah, that's it. So, and also it's also natural. I don't want to say that those people are cowards, not at all. It's very natural. Please find me an army where a soldier says, I will fight now an enemy's army alone without my comrades.
Sure.
You would not find
Doesn't
this,
happen.
because it's also not very intelligent, because you would immediately lose.
Right.
So the
We're
question,
social animals.
yes, in a way, yes. Animals in the correct philosophical way.
Right, well,
yes,
that from
yeah.
an Aristotelian
Yes, yes.
perspective. Rational
Exactly,
animals,
obviously,
social, political animals, he would say.
It's all on politikon,
Yeah,
of course. So what we have here is a situation where we need natural leadership, and natural leadership was promoted by the church always, and nowadays through the whole egalitarian and liberal and socialist and communist movements, it's more or less very difficult for modern people to find out how this looks like. But we know as
You mean
Catholics,
a real hierarchy.
a real hierarchy,
right.
yes. And I give you now
To accept
two
one.
examples of a very real hierarchy. Everyone will accept this. If a child is born, so it's already in your hand, and you see its face, etc. The most natural hierarchy on earth is that this child is definitely not in charge of doing the household. 100% not. It will be the mother and the father in a way, however they take care of it. It's normally the mother if it comes to the household, and normally the father for every outside thing.
Sure.
So that you will see it's a very natural hierarchy. Interestingly, as we see, why do I bring this example? Because in this example, hierarchy is shown to us in the most beautiful way. What does it mean to be the leader? It means to serve. So what is actually the purpose of the parents if the child comes? Serving the needs of the child.
Sure.
So so the first thing they have to take care of the child is brought up in a Christian way. So you have to baptize it quite early. You have to pray for it. You have to keep it in your. It's very difficult at the beginning, and things like this. Then you obviously have to take care of its food, its clothing, and all of this. So actually, leading the household means serving the weakest in the household. And that's a natural hierarchy.
Right.
So you see that the one on top is actually the one serving the one below him, and not the one asking them to serve him.
Right, sure.
There is such a thing as well, and it comes naturally. So for example, if the child grows up a little bit and the child is capable of doing things himself, then obviously the parents have to ask the child to do it, because they want the child to be prepared to have his own household later.
To be a father later on, to be
So
a
you see
husband, a provider.
That's a natural hierarchy. So now look at the church. Let's now look. Everyone who listens to your podcast will know at least one good priest. It's difficult sometimes to name many, but you will see God will never leave you alone. You will always find good priests. If you really ask for them in prayer, you will always have them. So let's look at a good priest. The good priest, let's say, gives a good leadership in church by celebrating Mass in a very reverent way. Let's say the most reverent way possible for this priest. He will try to prepare his homilies in a way that it really helps you gaining more understanding of the faith and going deeper inside into the church, actually. He will help you in times of need, where, for example, you're sick and or someone is dying, and he will assist you, or he will perform the baptism of your children, or he will marry you, whatever, all those things. So at the end of the day, everyone will accept that this priest is the leader of his, let's say, parish community. Why is he the leader? Because he's serving, first of all, God.
Right.
By performing the most important thing on earth, the holy sacrifice of the Mass,
right.
which is done in order to honor God, not to honor us, but to honor God. And therefore, he opens up heaven's graces, more or less, and helps God to provide them to the people in a way Christ created this. So, for example, Christ told his apostles that they should hear confession, so he hears confession. He told them exactly how he wants the Holy Mass to be celebrated, so they celebrate the Holy Mass. He wanted them to go out and preach to the people, so they go to the chancel and preach to the people, etc. So that's exactly what they do. So by serving God, they do really serve us, because God served us by with the sacrifice on the cross was the biggest thing God could ever do to us. And therefore, what is asked for us from us is that we now start serving this as well. So it's a hierarchy here. It's serving each other more or less in a way by serving God. And so that's two natural hierarchies. So naturally, you would now try to find this in politics as well. And that's where modernism comes in. The modern political understanding makes it more or less impossible for this to happen. Not totally. So if you have still a few good politicians are still out there, and those politicians, everyone would agree, as soon as a politician is good, you would agree that, well, he's good because he serves his flock, more or less. So he's not betraying them, he's not lying to them, he's honest, for example. Everyone would say a politician who's honest is a better politician than a dishonest politician. Everyone would say this. Go through the 10 Commandments, and if a politician tries to keep every of the 10 Commandments, you would consider him a very good politician. If he tries to do this, it's already amazing. It's more or less extraordinary, actually. So if you look at this, then you will find out that modernism tried to destroy traditional politics by getting families out. So first of all, in Europe, they destroyed the whole idea of monarchy and aristocracy, the real monarchic principle.
The state family.
It's a Catholic principle, yes. It's the family.
The Habsburg.
For example, the Habsburgs in Austria, yes, or the the Bourbons and so on, all those different families. The Wittelsbach in Bavaria and so on. And you will find those families, they obviously make also mistakes, but they represent the principle of family on the higher level. So if you look in old books in Austria, for example, you will find many people referring to the emperor as also the father of their people. So that's very interesting. And the emperor was a father of their people because he was there to serve them. So for example, the last emperor of Austria, Blessed Karl of Austria, was, for example, known for receiving, even in the middle of the war, receiving everyone who wanted to talk with him. Always. And he kept them in his prayers. And he had priests, and he asked them to celebrate masses for the needs of the people who visited him. Things like this. He was there for them all the time. His predecessor, Emperor Franz Joseph, who was not as pious as Karl, but also quite pious, with ups and downs, did exactly the same. He was known for never sitting down. He was known for working standing on a standing desk, because the people were coming in and out, and he was always receiving them, listening to everyone who came to him. Try to get now an appointment at the Chancellor of Austria. And Austria is way smaller than the monarchy of Austria was back then. We're talking about tens of millions of people. Now we talk about 9 million people. It's more or less impossible to get an appointment with the Chancellor.
You can't meet with him. He's not going to talk
different.
to you.
Try to get a normal appointment with the President of the United States. It's really difficult. Try to get an appointment with the Pope in Rome. It's easier. Even now this is a little bit difficult, but it's even easier to get an appointment with the Pope, even though the Pope is in charge of billions of people, than with the President of the United States, who is in charge of only a few millions. Obviously, I know that this is a little bit a difficult example, but you know what I'm talking about. Sure. So after this was destroyed, the whole principle of family was destroyed, and therefore it's very difficult for a modern politician to understand this. What is this? First of all, that politics is not a job. It's everyone's duty to take care of his own home country, and some people have the vocation that they do this in a leading position. So we would call it statesmanship and not politics. We can call it politics as well.
Stadtmannschaft.
No, I would call it in German. I would call it Staatswesen or then Staatsmann, Staatsmännisch, whatever. Yeah. So what you have here is that you have politicians who now think in periods. So they think in election periods. They think in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years periods, and most of them don't really care about what's coming afterwards. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you will find many politicians who lie to you on a constant basis, because they know that whatever they promise you now is not even possible to introduce in the little time they have. And that's now where our work comes in. I believe that if we as Catholics ask for a very good political representation, it's a little bit unrealistic and not really very, very, very Christian to do that without working, first of all, on ourselves to become better Christians, just better people, and second of all, to understand that there is no such thing as a good politics without good families. There is no such thing. So if we continue And now we come to the reason why pro-life obviously is number one of my political topics,
Sure.
the whole abortion issue. If we continue to kill, and I'm now quoting WHO numbers, 70 to 100 million children a year.
How many in
world.
Austria?
In Austria, it's between 35,000 and up. We don't know.
Right.
We don't have official numbers. We have only the numbers provided by the abortionists themselves, and they say this number.
Is this done by the state or all the
There's a
Austrian?
huge fight right now going on about this. It depends on which country, which part of Austria you are, but normally it's not done by the state. No.
Okay, so
But
if you
there
go to
are
the
parts
public
where
health
public hospitals do it.
Krankenhaus, you won't get
You
an
normally
abortion
have
then.
private clinics run by Planned Parenthood or Mary Stopes International. They are more or less behind them, financing them indirectly or directly.
Interesting. So Planned Parenthood from the United States finances
and Mary Stopes
abortions.
from the United States. Both are from the
I didn't
United
know
States.
that.
Yeah, they are. Mary Stopes
Amazing.
is funding the biggest one.
Amazing.
In
So
Austria.
it's all private though. It doesn't happen.
Most of it is private, and we have it in some public hospitals, unfortunately, as well. We right now have a huge fight against this in Tyrol, for example, where they want to introduce this. It's not there yet. There's only one abortionist in all of Tyrol. He kills up to 1,000 babies a year, if you follow his own words. One man, 1,000 children a year. He works now already for decades. Just imagine this. It's insane. So I believe that if we do not fight against
Pray
this,
for that man.
how can we fight against anything else? I give you now a few examples. Let's talk about the migration crisis, for example. Many people in Europe are, and I think that's right to be afraid of all the migrants, because obviously the migration, most of them did not come from a war area. Most of them come out of
economic migrants.
Yes. Then we have a huge Islamic immigration. Islamic immigration is done very organized by Islamic organizations. They pay this. We know this. It's not a secret. You see all the different terror attacks in Europe and so on. So many people, and right they are, say, well, I don't want them to be in our country. But at the same time, they kill their children. So if you kill your own offspring, then your country will be empty at the end of the day. And emptiness does not exist in the modern world. So if there's a city like Vienna, this city will never be empty. If we don't have our own children here, other children will be there.
Right.
And it's not about, I'm not talking bad about the children of the Muslims. Obviously, they're also innocent children. You know,
Right. It'll be a very different country.
It's just different, yeah. It's a different culture and everything, and sometimes even very, very problematic, obviously. But let's not talk about this aspect. Just about the sheer fact that if you kill your own children, other people's children will be there. It's very, very easy understandable, isn't it?
Right, sure.
Or the green ideology, for example. The green ideology
very
says
anti-human in this way.
Yes,
we're the problem.
That's it.
Save the planet, kill yourself.
That's it. The Fridays for Future, for example, said No Children for Future was at the main first conference they held in Switzerland. By the way, it costed millions of euros. Nobody knows who paid for it. Then afterwards we found out that it was a big multinational concerns who paid, obviously, for this very green-looking thing. But they said No Children for Future. And they talk about, that I'm quoting them, that every new child being born carries a CO2 backpack, and it has to get rid of it backpack by doing works for more or less communist-like systems. It's totally sick.
Very Christian idea in a way, right? Like you have your sin, and then you're supposed to like. But it's an ersatz Christianity.
That's it. No, it's a perversion. It's a perversion. That's the whole thing.
It's like Christianity without a salvation.
That's it. We're
all the Paschal Lamb.
That's it. You will never find anything on earth which is not the perversion of the truth.
Sure.
Because the evil does not have its own entity. It needs the good entity.
It's a deprivation of the good.
It needs it. There is no such thing as a sickness per se. If I talk with someone who has cancer, then I cannot talk with this person and with the cancer sitting next to him. I will talk with this very person, and he has cancer right now. So a part of his body does not work in the way it should work.
Sure.
This is the same with all our sins, the same with all our problems. So at the end of the day, obviously it needs the good thing. And if we continue with another example, I can give so many, and then I have to stop because it's way too long already. You will find out that the same applies to, for example, the gender ideology. The gender ideology tells you that you're allowed to change whenever you want everything. So your sex, more or less your sex. It's not possible, but by doing surgeries which deform you in a way that it may be, if the surgery is performed in the best way possible, you look a little bit like the other sex, but obviously you don't.
It's an ersatz version of the other sex.
You destroy your whole body, and it's not really reversible in the way it would. Many people think it is. But look at this, and if you look at, for example, the gender.
Is that big here too? It's huge.
Right
in the
now,
States.
we have the discussions about this.
Okay,
right now,
because in the States, it's
it's a huge topic.
Metastasized.
But I have to say
it's
that
everywhere.
That the United
how
States,
is it here? Yeah.
Yes, there was in the United States. There was this guy, this man called Mr. Matt Walsh, who made this documentation. Was a woman. It was very good in my eyes, and here in Europe we also have the same discussions, obviously going on. and the transgender movement does not work without abortion. We have to know this.
Why is that? What's the connection?
Because the thing about this is there are two things. First of all, if you say that you are able to decide on your body more or less in a way that you're able to destroy your own body, that this is only possible if you have a philosophy of being in general able to destroy a body of a human being on purpose, even though it didn't do anything wrong. So first of all, the ideology is an abortionist ideology. It's a little bit difficult maybe to see, but from a Christian perspective, it's very logical. It's very logical. Then look at how it's performed. So for example, it's if you pervert this, for example, if a woman wants to become a man officially, but she still has sexual intercourse with a man, and then she becomes pregnant, for example, many of those women abort their children, because obviously the whole process of being pregnant puts out so many female hormones that you immediately, most of the hormone treatments do not work if you're pregnant. They fully, and the children are terribly sorry for the children of a woman who is pregnant and takes hormones, but just look at this. So you will find that all those things would not work without abortion. Just look at the whole feminism idea, the whole idea that a real woman is a woman who is so strong that she can decide whether a child in her body is allowed to live or not.
Right.
It all comes with abortion.
Right.
I could continue now. Look at communism. Communism never worked without abortion. The Chinese and the Russian, especially the Russians back when they were still communism, but still now the Chinese had a terrible policy. And you can look the numbers up online in Moscow and Peking. You had years where they had an abortion rate of 80% of the children, 80% of the society. Not every year, but you can look up the official numbers and you will find that those numbers existed. 77%, 78%, 79%. Those numbers existed. So you see that every diabolical ideological movement which is in the end directed against humanity because God became how do you say
man.
A man. Do you say this in English? Yes.
Yeah.
Because God became man.
Because and it's anti-incarnational.
That's
it's
anti-incarnational.
Right.
And
that's where the devil wants to play. He doesn't like.
And it's also against God because obviously man were created in his image as well. So you have many different argumentations for this, which show very well that at the end of the day, every anti-God ideology has to kill innocent children. And it's very important that they are innocent. That's very, very important because that makes killing an innocent guy on purpose is called murder.
Right.
That's the definition. So at the end of the day, you will find out that without this terrible, terrible development, we would have a different world, a completely different world. You will see that lots of ideologies would not exist if abortion would be totally gone.
It's very interesting.
And it can only be totally gone if we as Catholics, the Christian society in general, but especially the Catholics, because the Catholic understanding is, in my eyes, by far the broadest understanding of the whole issue, also because it takes into consideration the sinful character of abortion, for example, a thing which you do not find in many Protestant outlets. So it's very important for us to understand that an abortion is a huge sin, because the person
primary sin in a way, right? I mean, you're killing the image of God.
Who is killing
God?
it?
You're killing God.
Who is killing it?
The mother, the person
that's
designed
it. Even sometimes the mother is obviously forced, but well, the mother and her
facilitator.
Often it is the physical. Often is it then the real father and the real mother killing their own offspring, or at least asking someone else to kill their offspring. But making more or less what we call an Auftragsmord. So they pay someone else to do murder.
Right.
So at the end of the day, they engage a killer more or less. So at the end of the day, what you have is that one of the biggest sin of mankind happens here when God designs the mother and the father, especially in their ability to perform the sexual act in order to procreate. So it is the main perversion of the human creation itself. Just look at Genesis. In the first chapter of Genesis already says this.
Sure.
Already says this, and this is killed. It always says in the Holy Bible, it says that when man and woman marry, then they become one flesh.
Right. Before Adam and Eve were separated in a way, they go back to the initial, the one where it was one flesh.
Yes, and now look at it. The child is one flesh of its parents. It has the genetic code of both. So from a pure natural science point of view, it is already one flesh of the parents. Right. And this you kill, it's so amazing. So if you look at this, then you totally understand why if someone goes ahead and tells you, well, you Catholics should not always focus about this topic. Well, I have to. I really, literally have to focus on this topic, because if I don't do this, I can stop working in politics in general. I can totally stop.
Right. If we're killing our children, you don't live in a society of law. You live in a society of the jungle. You live
That's it.
So you're just saying, I want to leave the jungle and go to a civilization, a rule of law. And the first rule of law would be, why do we set up society in the first place? To not kill each other. A couple interesting points. This hierarchy thing is very interesting, because I heard somebody talking about this. Even your consciousness is hierarchical at every moment. You have to choose. There's many pieces of information that you could be bringing in right now, and you have to choose to focus on certain things. So hierarchy is built into your very consciousness at every single moment of the day. So there will be something that's at the highest point of that, whatever it is at any given moment for you. So what's on your altar of your consciousness? What are you worshiping? Comes from the English word worthship. What is the highest worth? The other thing is this interesting philosophical perversion. There's this great legal scholar who actually wrote an amicus brief for the Dobbs case called, his name's Robert George at Princeton. And he talks about this, that it's really a Gnostic philosophy, essentially, because what it's saying is that, like, for example, the transgender, the material is bad. I'm really not a substance. I am a flesh suit with a spirit inside. So I look like a man, but really spiritually, deep down, I'm a woman, right? And this is and so that's this separation. Same thing. Then you switch to abortion. Same thing. Well, yes, it's human, but it's not a person yet. So like we can kill it because it's not quite like you and me. Yes, it has the DNA and the body, but it's not conscious yet. So we don't have the spirit yet. Therefore, it's killable. Same thing with marriage. The third piece. It's not a conjugal unit that's natural. It's two spirits connecting. So two men's spirits can connect. Two women's spirits can connect. Right? So it's this Gnostic idea that the material world is bad. It's not that the Christian idea is that the material, God made it good. Everything was good, especially human beings. And yet we fell away from God's will. But the Gnostic view is, no, it's bad from the beginning. It's all fallen. But there's this special feel, but we have this spirit inside that can transcend. So it's really interesting to me, this main sort of what the battle lines are. And it seems like this Gnostic view is the modernist view in a way. That it's this idea
it's
that
oldest philosophical battle in the world,
right? And it's the one where the other thing that, because we have a different eschatology. So our eschatology is that Christ is coming back and will judge the living and the dead, and those who are worthy will either we're going to go either to purgatory, to hell, or to heaven. And whereas the Gnostics, because they don't have this transcendence, they're looking for an imminent eschaton. So they're looking for a heaven on earth here. So if we just create the right pie, for example, or make the right, if we split up the economic pie the right way, the lions can lay down with the lambs. And this is a very dangerous ideology, because you and I, we are going to dissent from this. And that's why we have to go to the gulag, or we have to be canceled, or we have to be ignored, because we're the eggs that must be broken to make their perfect utopian omelet. And that's the problem. And the children are part of that too, because the liberated woman does not need to be tied down to family, to natural bonds, to children. She is to be liberated as an individual, which is a fundamental misunderstanding of the human person, as we talked about earlier, a naturally political animal, according to Aristotle, through St. Thomas Aquinas in the church. So that's really the battle. And what how do you, other than prayer, obviously, because that's a given, right? Like prayer to me is the number one weapon. What are your tactics to expose people who aren't understanding this, and who aren't they're not realized that they're captured by this Gnostic death cult, which is essentially what it is.
It is,
right? That's what it is. So how do you what's your tactics to wake them up?
So Bishop Schneider, Athanasius Schneider, calls it the new totalitarianism. This Gnostic world you're talking about right now. And what can we do? First of all, let's look at what the church asks us to do in order to promote the truth. The church, first of all, asks us to understand it ourselves. So we have to take care of it in our, not only in our prayer lives, but also as far as our intellect allows it. Try to understand why we believe what we believe. If we do so, we have to obviously we have to make the decision that what I'm talking about the four cardinal virtues. So first of all, you have to understand what is right. Then you have to decide that you really want to do what is right. That's
You
the
want to
second
be a
step.
saint.
You want, yes, but it's of course that's it. But at the end of the day, it's a basic decision every day. So whatever you do every day, you have to think. If a question comes up, you always have to decide: is this question? How do I answer this question? Looking at my whole purpose of my whole life, not just of the very second I'm deciding on. Second of all is as soon as you found out what is right and what is intelligent to do, you have to want it. You have to really try to get your will and to understand as to really want the truth. Then the third thing is you have to perform it. Because if you have to do it, that's what we call courage, by the way. That's courage. Courage is not necessarily also just doing something in public, fighting or something. Courage is especially doing physically what you know is right and what you want to do because you know it's right. It's all connected to each other. And if you do this, there are many ups and downs. Sometimes it will work, sometimes it will not work at all. And to be calm and to still be steady and just continue doing whatever you do, this is the fourth cardinal virtue. Unfortunately, I do not know the cardinal virtues in English, but that's the fourth cardinal virtue. It's keeping the right measure, So those are the cardinal virtues. So that's in general what we have to do in order to live a Christian life. And now follow those virtues and let's find out what this means for the tactical question you was just asking me. First of all, to make intelligent decision, you sometimes need knowledge you do not have yet, but you are able to have. Do not talk about things you're not able to have. If you read a book and you immediately see that you do not understand the first chapters, put it away. Don't try to understand something intellectually which you don't understand. It's not so important, and it's also not you're not stupid because you do not read a certain book. That's not about it. You have to read certain things, so the church asks you to have a certain knowledge about its teachings. So it's very wise to have this, but you do not have to read a whole library of Aristotle and St. Thomas in order to be a good Catholic. There are many saints in the past who did not read any of this and were wonderful saints. As soon as you finish this, it's the second question is you have to train your will. That you have to, as soon as you know something is definitely right, you have to train your will. You have to remind yourself constantly, that's really what I want to do. And you see, it's a free choice at the end of the day, because you decide whether you really want it or not. It's your decision. Nobody else can force you to want something in your brain. Right. Maybe they can manipulate you. Maybe that's possible, but not totally. And then we're talking about courage, and that's where the rest of society comes in. You will perform an action, and this action will be visible. And through the visibility, other people can see what you do. And they will ask you about this or will not ask you about this. If they ask you why you do a certain thing, you have to tell 100% the truth. And if they do not ask you about them, you don't go and brag about why you did something. You just do it, continue doing it. Because that's exactly that's where you exactly see if someone else is really interested in the truth or not. If someone else is actually also interested in what you do or not, and also interested in your opinion on something. So that's the first step. And then about the fourth step, about not being not embracing too much the ups and downs, but rather embrace the constant line in the middle.
Sure.
If you embrace too much the ups, you will first of all become proud very, very, very soon. And pride is the number one sin which kills every good effort. If you become depressed because something does not work, then you start losing hope very, very fast, and you should never lose hope, because hope is one of the virtues.
Right? Is that called?
Excuse me?
It's called acedia, spiritual. It's like sloth in a way.
Yes.
You get like sluggish.
That's it. So you, at the end of the day, this is the main example. Now the question is it really our duty, and can it be our duty to think in tactics for a higher level, so not only for us? And I think, yes, to some degree it is. It depends on your vocation. So first of all, if you, for example, have a family, and I mean with have a family, by the way, not only being married, have own children, but also your own parents. It's also your family, obviously. Sure. So if you have a family, and everyone has a family, a broken or a not broken family, normally, then if you look at this, then the first question is there anything you can do in order to make your family a better family? That's the first question everyone should ask himself if it comes to a natural, real world you experience every day. Sure. Second of all, is what you're doing right now your job? Is your job asking from you to lie or to perform something which is definitely against the faith? Then you need to get rid of the job. Ask God for His help, His guidance. It is sometimes very hard, but God always provides. Always. He asks us if we the really saintly people, and obviously it's difficult. You cannot tell someone, "I do it like this saint," because the saints are not necessarily examples for your personal life, but rather general examples.
Sure.
And general. So it's a little bit difficult to apply a single saint to all of your life. It's sometimes difficult. But what you can see is that God Himself says that, why do you try to prepare yourself for many weeks? Look at the flowers on the field.
Right.
Look at
They
them.
don't
That's
think
what He
about
says.
the future, right?
And they are way more beautifully dressed than the kings.
Sure.
That's what He says. So at the end of the day, what we can find out here is that if you really want to perform something good, we have to understand that this is the first task. So if we checked our family, if we checked our jobs, or how we earn our money, that's where we can put lots of good work power into something good. If we have a vocation for something public, so if we have a vocation, for example, going out into public and speaking out loud, for example, let's say you are the leader of a certain movement, or you created a pro-life group, for example,
Sure.
or you like what you do a podcast and things like this, then what we have to find out is what kind of language are we using? Is the language used correct? Do we spread the right terms? Do we spread the right understanding of things? Often we think something is good, but it's not good because it's our words and not the words of the church. The words of the church are, I promise to you, always way more wise than your words,
100%.
because it's 2,000 years of public revelation, and all the thousands of years before that on preparation for the church coming. And so you have thousands of years and thousands of years of wisdom and of prophets and of saints and of the church teaching. I guarantee you 100% you will never be better than this.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, whatever you touch a topic, try to get as much information on it by standard classical church literature. Try to look into people who are really good theologians, if you have a theological question, to good philosophers, if you have a philosophical question, in good examples, for example, good saints who are politicians, if you have a political question and things like this. Try to spread this rather than spreading your own ideas. And sometimes you will see God will give you a certain task. And if He gives you a certain task, ask for His guidance. I want to give a concrete example, because many people do not like if you talk in theoretical terms. For example, what is a concrete task everybody has? We talked about the pro-life issue.
Sure.
We both know that every unborn child in the womb of their mother does not have a voice. Naturally, the voice of these children are their own parents. So actually, naturally, they have a voice.
But they're lost in a Gnostic death cult.
That's it. So the problem is that the parents are silenced, either on purpose, or some of the parents do not know about this and just don't really know what to do. But at the end of the day, we have to give a voice to those unborn children. That's something, for example, everyone has to do in a way or another. Try not to fight in a way you are not made for fighting. So, for example, if you are a very introverted lady, raised 4 children, have lots of things to do with your own children and grandchildren, etc., and sit at home and let's say have a weak knee, then it's definitely not your duty to do an everyday on the street campaigning. It's definitely not your duty. You can do it. Maybe it's exactly your vocation. It might be, but in general, it's very easy to understand that this is maybe not your main duty. So it might be your duty to be a very, very good educator for your own children and grandchildren. It might be your duty to be promise God to make a certain prayer for every day for this. It might be your duty to spread information among your friends. It might even be your duty to write emails to politicians or whoever, who knows, But at the end of the day, we are not egalitarians. Not everyone has to do the same thing, and not everyone is equal. Sure. Not at all. We are equal in the eyes of God in a way that God wants every one of us to get to come to a point of salvation. That's true, but He wants every one of us to get to come to a point of salvation in our unique way.
Right. Grace builds upon your nature.
That's it. So at the end of the day, I think if you follow those examples already, it's really a hard task. Many people want big things on earth. They always ask for the big bang. They want. If, for example, a new politician comes in, you want a new politician to immediately change everything. Even though from a natural point of view, it's not even possible. But you want it. You just want change. And then you say, now it's getting better. But actually, you're distracting yourself from the real change which should happen. And which is always your own personal change. Always. It's you could call it a boring old church message, but it's the most important message of the whole teaching of the church, is that whenever you try to be a better person, this will change society way more. Right. Because it first of all changes you. And you are one little, but not too little, you have an immortal soul, part of society.
Right. Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
That's
so your vocation of becoming a saint, everybody in every single area of life. Has your public ministry about these things affected your personal life? Meaning, have you had to bear costs, or basically, there's but I mean, in specific, is it the kind of thing, just to give people like what you have to be prepared for? If you're going to do this thing publicly in any sort of way, lost friendships, lost job opportunities, things like this. Do you feel this in your own life, in your own mission?
So of course I do. Let me maybe put the focus on something a little bit different, because it's easier for people to understand.
Very American
what
question.
The fights I have in my life are my personal fights at the end of the day. And I believe what everyone has to be prepared for is to bring the sacrifices needed in order to do what your duty is. Let me come back to a very basic example again. If you, for example, know that you have a problem, let's say a problem with eating too much, or you're not really performing well on what you should do in your everyday course surrounding your own family. Let's say, for example, you had a talk with your own mother and you used words of insulting words towards her, which were not necessary. At the end of the day, we all know that there's a sacrifice needed in order to make those things good again. So in the sacrifice, in the case of your own mother, what to call her and apologize, maybe even go there and apologize. The sacrifice you have to do for performing better work is you need to invest maybe more hours of work, or you need to invest them in a different way. You need to get distractions away. Maybe you even have to delete a certain app of your phone. For example, I deleted Instagram half a year ago, even though I had some thousands of followers, because it was just distracting me from my family life, and it's not good. So at the end of the day, those are the little sacrifices. And now everyone themselves can find out that obviously if you scale things up, so the more public things get, the bigger the sacrifices normally are. Or the more important the decision is in your personal life, the bigger the sacrifice is. So yes, obviously I lost people who I called my friends and who maybe even called themselves my friends. But at the end of the day, my biggest friendship must be towards God.
Sure.
And I want many people on earth to be my friends. But I found out that there is no real friendship if they do not want me to go to heaven, if I do not want them to go to heaven.
Right.
So at the end of the day, sometimes it sounds strange, but the most friendly thing you can do is stop being friends with someone if friendship is based on a lie. For example, if you know that there's one topic you're not allowed to talk about, let's say abortion, and you have a friend, let's say a female friend, let's say two girls, they are friends with each other.
It's a big one, right? Yeah,
I know lots of those examples.
Yeah.
And suddenly your girlfriend, not in a romantic way, but just your friend, your female friend, tells you, well, I think I'm going to get an abortion. And you now have to make the decision. Are you talking with her about this or not? Then it's crystal clear. If she tells you, you have to talk with her about it. If it is abortion, I even believe that you even have to talk about it with her if she does not personally tell you, but if others tell you, because that's part of friendship, that you need to show them the truth. This will, in most cases, end the friendship. Let's say, I think in more than 50%, but in many cases it will not end the friendship and maybe save a child's life. So at the end of the day, here's a very, very easy example. And sometimes everyday examples are not as easy to understand as this one.
Right.
Because sometimes it's a little bit difficult to really know what's going on right now, and is it wise with talking with my friend? Did he really ask me for my opinion? If it's maybe about a little bit, for example, I don't know. I have many friends who then have a girlfriend and they move in together. And they tell me, I just moved in with my girlfriend. And that's sometimes, for example, sometimes it's really difficult to talk about this. And that's something you just have to consider in prayer. So you have to ask your priest. Maybe if you have a good spiritual guidance, ask the priest. Right. Sometimes priests have quite good understanding of this. It depends on how well you're connected with him, with the priest. But this is sometimes very difficult, because sometimes it might, be wrong to immediately tell your friend, well, you're sinning with this. But it is definitely not wrong to immediately start praying for this friend and also for his girlfriend, and to the next occasion where you have a good fundament, just talk with him naturally and say, do you mind, I would really like to talk with you about this once, and just try to find a good way.
It's hard to know. It
is hard to know, and that's what I say. The reason why I mentioned the cardinal virtues is the cardinal virtues are key for this. You have to understand, again, is your talk with your friend good? If you look at your own life, you want to come to heaven. Do you believe in this whole situation, is your friendship a friendship where this would actually be needed, that you talk with him about this? Then you need to do it. Then you really have to decide, okay, I want to do it because it's good, because I already found out it's good. Then you need to perform it. And then afterwards, you are not allowed, or you are allowed, but you should not be totally depressed because it didn't work out, or extremely happy because you right now helped him to become a saint.
It's even harder in families.
Way harder in family.
Because
the closer,
you know,
the harder.
Yeah, family's difficult.
But the closer, the more you actually have to do it.
Yeah,
in a way.
That's the hardest
in a way. For example, it's often very difficult. What do children do towards the parents? Children have to honor the parents. They have to. And if you want to honor someone, you cannot lie to him.
Right.
It's not possible. So, for example, we have here in Austria, we have the heir to the throne of the monarchy here is Archduke Karl of Austria. And then his son is the next heir to the throne, is Archduke Ferdinand. And Ferdinand came out of a normal marriage between Archduke Karl and the Baroness Francesca Thyssen. And now Archduke Karl publicly announced a year ago that he is divorced and now lives together with his new girlfriend. His own son made a public statement that he is not accepting this. His own son said, I'm a Catholic, I believe that this is wrong. His own son did it.
Publicly.
Can you imagine this? His own son doesn't look from the outside like a very, very faithful man because he's a race car driver, but he's actually he's a Catholic. He's a very faithful Catholic. Just imagine this. His own son had the courage, asked by the reporter what he thinks about the divorce of his father, not to say, well, it's his thing. He even said, well, in my opinion, it's wrong because my parents are my father and my mother, and not my father and his girlfriend.
Right.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Very
so
difficult.
It takes courage.
It takes a huge amount of courage to say that. Amazing. Yeah, it's a difficult piece of this whole puzzle. Anyway, Alexander, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to me today about all these issues. Obviously, you're really passionate about bringing Christ's message of hope to the world, and thank you, really. And where can people? Before we go, where can people find you? Where can they follow your work?
It's as I said, I don't do all my work publicly because I think sometimes it's not wise. But you can follow me on Twitter always at Tschugguel, just my name. And you can obviously subscribe to our newsletter, St. Bonifice Institute newsletter. We now do a conference in February. We invite everyone with a very nice ball after the conference, typical Viennese ball. So I guess it will be very, very nice to come to Vienna for this occasion. We have limited tickets, so it's good to and they are not very expensive. So it's you can that's a very good thing. Then you can also meet me and can talk with me. And obviously, whoever comes to Vienna, just shoot me an email if I'm around. I will always try to meet the people. Sometimes it's just not possible.
Right.
I'm very sorry about this.
Well, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
And thank you very much for what you do.
Yeah, thanks.
It was a pleasure.
Signing off.